I'm Mitchell Renz, host of the Raiders Report, and coming up here on today's show, I'm going to be looking at 6 players the Las Vegas Raiders should consider trading away if it helps them move up in the 2024 NFL Draft to select a quarterback. It's no secret. Antonio Pierce, he wants Jayden Daniels. Now, I wonder if you'd ask Telesco if he would want the exact same thing. He might want to stock up some picks here a little bit. But to me, if Antonio Pierce is going to say things like, everything is on the table, or I don't want a Band-Aid at the quarterback spot, or I'm looking for my franchise quarterback, if there's a scenario that comes available that the Raiders have that opportunity to go up and get that franchise quarterback, I think that they're going to try to do it on draft night. Here's what Antonio Pierce had to say on trading up for a quarterback. I think everything's on the table. Whatever makes the Raiders better, I'm all for. When I say I'm a go-getter, meaning whatever it takes to win, whatever it takes to get the best player to make our team the best, that's what I want to do. And that's what I'd like to see us do. So to me, if you know that the scenario is that the Bears are picking Caleb Williams at 1, which means moving up to picks 2, 3, 4 are the most realistic. Like, I made this show before, and this was probably about 2-3 months ago, around the idea of could the Raiders potentially trade up to number 1, and which players would I involve in a trade? Now, based off a lot of the reports, if you're going to make this deal end up going down, the Raiders have to figure out, what do I have to put together in a trade to go up to 2, 3, or 4. Now, a lot of the times, obviously, they want picks. So think of the players here as that cherry on top. For even more context, a trade that happened recently that's kind of similar, like if the Raiders go from 13 up to 4, is kind of how I would view this trade here, where the 49ers were 12 and they went to 3 to go get Trey Lance. Obviously, this trade was a just huge failure, but this is what it cost. It cost the Dolphins, what the Dolphins got was 3 first-round picks and essentially a third-round comp pick. So knowing this, if I'm Las Vegas and I don't want to have to throw in maybe that third-round comp pick, or if I'm like, all right, I'll give you 3 first-round picks, but instead of throwing in an extra, can I just throw in one of these guys here? So those are some of the names to just keep in mind. So what do you think here? Should the Raiders give up 3 first-round picks to go get Jayden Daniels? If you're in the camp of no, like this team should not go ahead and do this, then you're probably not going to like today's video. If you're sitting here going, you know what, Mitch, at this point, we haven't had a legit quarterback that gives us a chance to win a Super Bowl since Derek Carr in 2016-2015, since Rich Gannon back in 2002, and I'm sick and tired of the quarterback mediocrity. I'm with you. I hear it. I would trade 3 first-round picks right now if it meant the Raiders getting Jayden Daniels. So guess what? I am going to type my T for trade. So for those of you that are watching the show live, shout out to all of you. For those that aren't watching the show live, remember, we go live every single Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, 4 p.m. Eastern Time, 1 p.m. Pacific. Now, coming up here, the players that we're going to look at are the 6 guys that I would consider trading to get a deal done. And a lot of the times the moves that end up happening are based on sometimes contract restructures, sometimes guys that are added in free agency. And these conversations are going to continuously happen as the NFL draft, which crazily is a month away. So let's go to the first name here on today's show. It's Byron Young, the defensive tackle from Alabama last season. You're going to see a lot of names in terms of new regimes, because when new regimes come in, old regimes usually end up leaving. And Byron Young was selected in round 3, 74 overall in last year's draft. The Raiders went out, they signed Christian Wilkins, they re-signed Adam Butler, they re-signed John Jenkins, and have made it known that, let's face it, the defensive tackle interior is a major spot that they are trying to upgrade. Now, Byron did look okay last season before his injury in the offseason, but then was unable to get back onto the field. And if you're Las Vegas, and I think they might have a little bit more connections with Marquand McCall, who this team signed, next to Jade Silvera, and if Byron is not somebody that gives them a lot of confidence, then, all right, you wipe your hands clean. You move on from a guy that, let's face it, the old regime ended up bringing in. Yes, you're going to eat $780K. You're still going to save a little bit of money. But with most of the players that you're going to see here on today's show, they're not going to be worried about money. They're going to be more worried about the roster spot. And right now, I don't know if Byron Young makes the Raiders 53-man roster. Like, for everybody who's watching the show right now, do you think Byron Young makes the Raiders 53-man roster? I don't know. So I believe if a team were to offer them a 6th-round pick, I think they would take it. So knowing that this team would probably rather have a 6th-round pick than Byron Young, if I can involve him in a trade that helps me go up and get a franchise quarterback, I'm going to do it every single day of the week. I got 5 more names coming up here on the Raiders Report around potential trade targets or trade candidates that the Raiders could ship away if it helped them land that franchise quarterback. Before I get into it, though, I do want to give a shout-out to today's sponsor, Prize Picks, and Prize Picks has been rocking with us this year. They were rocking with us during football season, had tons of fun, winning bunches of money, and even when you don't win, you still have a good time because you're locked into the games. But I know a lot of people that watch this show are like, Mitch, I don't know if I watch a lot of college basketball. Mitch, I don't know if I like college basketball. I promise you this, I'm not even that big of a college basketball fan. But you know what? If I put down a few dollars and I'm sitting down watching women's college basketball or men's college basketball, hell, if I can get my fiance Alex, which Saturday night, this is what our date night was. And there's like a lot of guys out there. Maybe you're looking for a brand new thing to do on date night. There's new college basketball games coming up on Thursday and on Friday. Alex and I went to a bar on Saturday, and every single game that happened, we just put down $10. We won some, we lost some, but for like 7 hours, I got to watch college basketball, have some good beers, and Alex loved it the entire time. Like, how many guys watching the show right now are like, honestly, that sounds like everything I would hope for on a weekend? I had an amazing weekend. It was worth every single penny, and on top of it, I had the chance to make some money back. So I love what Prize Picks does. It's super simple to do. It's more, it's less. If you want to take the picks that I have, I'm not going to sit up here and act like a college basketball guru because I'm not. These are the picks from our college basketball team here at Chat Sports, and they made me some money this week, so I would imagine they probably can make you guys some money as well. And if you want to get started, all you got to do is go to prizepicks.com/CLNS and make sure that you use code CLNS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. Daily fantasy sports made easy. Shout out to Prize Picks, the #1 daily fantasy sports app out there. Let's go to the next trade candidate, Matthew Butler. There is a world to me that both Byron Young and Matthew Butler might not be on this team. And what's crazy is last offseason I said that I don't think Matthew Butler and Neil Farrell Jr. end up making this roster. We made multiple videos on it saying, like, sources close to us indicate that the Raiders do not like Butler. They do not like Neil Farrell Jr. They trade away Farrell. Matthew Butler didn't make the team. He ends up coming back a little bit later on. I'm sitting up here telling y'all right now that there is a chance that Matthew Butler and Byron Young are not on this roster going into the season. They selected him in round 5, pick 175 overall in 2022. And then everything that I just said with Byron is the exact same reason of why this team could potentially move on from Matthew Butler. Like, you're going to eat nothing and you save $915K. If you wanted to play the game of, well, I don't know how much I trust Nesta Jade Silvera. I don't know how much I trust the Marquand McCall. And I just want to keep at least one of these guys, which is the question that I'm going to ask all of you. Because if you're Telesco, if you're Pierce, you're having the exact same conversations. And in terms of overall value, I do think Byron Young you would get more for because he was a 3rd-round pick compared to a 5th-round pick in Butler. But, like, when I say trade value 7th-rounder, I'm talking like comp pick 7th-rounder in 2025 would be probably the value you'd get on a guy like Matthew Butler. But let's play a game here. Let's say you got to pick one to trade, okay? You got to pick one to trade. Who would you pick to trade? The guy that you would want to, I guess, not be on the team is probably the better way to say this because both these guys don't have a lot of trade value. Would you decide to trade away Byron Young? That way you can keep Matthew Butler. Or are you going to keep Byron Young and trade away Matthew Butler? Whoever you want to trade, let me know. BYMB. I'm going to be looking down in the comments. Let's go to the next name here on the Raiders report. It's Chris Smith III, safety out of Georgia. And this one might pain Chugs here a little bit because Smith was one of the dudes that he liked a lot last season, and I like Chris Smith too. I think Smith is a good defender, comes from a good program at Georgia, who was a big-time leader, and he was a star there. But I've also said on the show that if it was up to me, I would extend both Trevon Merrick and Marcus Epps, 2 young players. On top of that, this regime did not draft Christopher Smith. On top of that, they just re-signed Isaiah Paulomeo. So, like, at best to me, this is your 4th safety on the roster. If you end up trading him, you save close to $800,000. Still, it's not a lot of money, but if you could still save some, you could penny pinch here a little bit, and then you add a little, and then guess what? You have enough to get a potential vet minimum type of contract. My other thing is I'm just so confident in Epps, Merrick, and I'm also just very confident in Isaiah Paulomeo that those are your top 3 guys, and I don't know how Smith is going to get work on a consistent basis, especially if I do just think that they're going to give a contract extension to Epps and Merrick. And that means he's got 3 years left here at the Raiders, and he's just going to be a backup for the entirety of his career, which maybe that's fine for him. that's not really what I want. Like, at the end of the day, I still want to try to find players that help me reach that ultimate goal. And right now, that ultimate goal is trying to find that franchise quarterback. So if I got to trade Christopher Smith to do it, yeah, I'm going to do it in a heartbeat. I got 3 more names coming up here, and the next one is a little bit of a bigger name. It's Divine Diablo. And with the other names that I just mentioned there, like Smith, Byron Young, Matthew Butler, nobody's really going to get all that excited about somebody like that. And I don't even know how much value Divine has because he is a linebacker. Sure, he's coming off a season where he had over 100 tackles, and I kind of feel bad for Diablo, similar to the way I feel bad for Malcolm Kuntz, where they've had to deal with all these different all these different head coaches, all these different defensive coordinators, a lot of mix-ups after COVID, and I'm sure it's been a little bit tough, especially for Diablo, who at Virginia Tech was a safety. They converted him to a linebacker. But if I can save $3.1 million and I can trade away Divine Diablo to a team that potentially needs a linebacker, because the other part of it is I'm pretty confident Diablo's not coming back once he hits the free agent market in 2025. Unless you're somebody who's like, you know what, Mitch? No, they're going to bring him back. If you think that they're going to bring him back, then I don't know if you should trade him. But if you don't think that they're going to bring him back in 2025, let's get something for him now. Like, once the NFL trade deadline happens, this is going to be a player that I will bring up as a potential trade candidate if the Raiders aren't in the mix, because I want to see what Amari Burney has to offer, because I know he's a hell of an athlete. I also know Divine Diablo is a hell of an athlete, but I continuously, time and time again, step up here on the show and I just say, maybe this will be the year for Diablo. Maybe it will. Maybe it won't. But you know what? There's a part of me that would rather give it a test with Amari Burney, see what he has to offer, instead of just continuously kick the can down the road with Divine Diablo. I got 2 more names coming up here on the show, but I do want to give a shout out to the Noti Gang. If you don't know what the Noti Gang is, it's people who hit that subscribe button and turn on the notifications, and these are the people that really try to get in the comment section first, which helps us out a lot here. So shout out to Zadoom, Raider Man Shark Allen, Chili Pallone Trucking 53, Raider Rebel 505, and then Samwell. Shout out to all of y'all and appreciate you joining the Noti Gang. Let's go to the next name here for my Raiders trade candidates to help us move up and get a QB. Jakorian Bennett at the cornerback position. You're probably seeing a trend here. Old McDaniels guy. He had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. But then Ziegler guy also on top of that. And when he had opportunities to play last season, it just wasn't a good thing here for Jakorian, right? Like, I think Jakorian is a very good athlete. I really, truly believe that. And I would like to see what he ends up doing this year in his second year with Patrick Graham. I would like to see if he's able to make a jump, because what I'm really curious is, does he make a jump kind of what Malcolm Kuntz did, where, all right, year 2, gets to calm down here a little bit, gets to learn a little bit more. He has the athletic ability. I think for Jakorian, it was a lot of up here last year. And can he get better? Or is he going to trend in the wrong direction and not figure it out? Because on top of this, like, how much playing time is Bennett actually going to get? Nate Hobbs, Jack Jones are going to be out there. The Raiders said getting a cornerback 1 is a priority. And if they end up keeping guys like a Brandon Faison, a Sam Webb, they might get on the field a little bit more than Jakorian, because Bennett now doesn't have the value that he did to this past regime. And I would say, based on the value of what you would get for him in a trade, 7th-round pick for a Jakorian Bennett. Like, again, I think people a lot of times think, like, you're going to get a lot more at this time of the year. No. I mean, look, Keenan Allen went for a 4th-round pick. What do you think Jakorian Bennett's going to go for? Conditional 7th. The final name is the big one here, and this is the name that I know when I was making this show is going to be the name that upsets some people. His name, it's Jakobi Meyers. And the only reason I continuously throw out the name of Jakobi Meyers as a potential trade candidate, especially for this video, because if you remember, I started this show off saying, if you're going to trade up, it's going to probably get the picks 2, 3, or 4. Well, guess what? The Patriots at pick 3, one of their biggest needs is a receiver. The Arizona Cardinals at pick 4, their biggest need is a wide receiver. So because of that, the odds of this situation alone make me want to put Jacoby in it based on those other team needs, not because I want to trade Jakobi Meyers. He did sign a 3-year deal this past offseason, and they've already restructured that contract. Now, because they restructured the contract, the Raiders do end up eating more money if he is traded. However, if a team trades for him, they only owe him $5 million because the Raiders are paying all that rest of the money. Like, you can say what you want about Jacoby. He's a hell of a run blocker. He fits what Antonio Pierce wants in a player, and he's He's a really effing good wide receiver 3, wide receiver 2 in the NFL. Like, he really, truly is, and I think he would fit this system well. Now, if you're looking for more speed, it's probably not Jakobi on top of that. But because the Raiders restructured his contract, it does make it easier for another team to potentially take on his deal, which at this point is what an NFL team would look at is, okay, you can't give me extra draft capital. Well, that means I want a player that's good on a little bit of a cheaper deal. Does that put more stress on Trey Tucker? Yes, it does. Does it put more stress on Davante Adams? Yes, it does. But if you're going to pay a receiver like Davante the amount of money that you're paying him, well, let's go. It's time to prove that you're a top receiver. And as Chug said when we were live, there's a lot of talent in this year's draft. And if you're able to go out and draft a receiver in those middle rounds to potentially replace a Jakobi Meyers, then I think you're in a good spot. Jakobi is somebody that I want on this team. But if I can keep Davante and get my franchise quarterback and I got to involve Jakobi in a trade, I'm going to do it because it helps the betterment of the Las Vegas Raiders, which is why I do this show. So my 6 trade candidates are Byron Young, Matthew Butler, Chris Smith, Divine Diablo, Jakorian Bennett, and Jakobi Meyers. These are the 6 players that I would be willing to trade up if it helped me go up and get a quarterback. Now, at the end of the day, I'll also say this, right? And I want y'all to give me a name a player that you'd be willing to trade to go get a top quarterback. I'm looking at you all in the eyes. I don't want to trade Davante, but I would be willing to do it if it helped us get a franchise quarterback. Like, you'd have to give me a really strong offer for him. The only player that I would never trade on this team is Max Crosby. As far as I'm concerned, anybody else, I can at least make an argument of why I would do it. I'll also say this, and I did not include the names that you're about to see in this video, but I could make this argument of why you should trade Aidan O'Connell or why you should trade Gardner Minshew. Because if you're the Raiders and you're trading up and you're going to go get Jayden Daniels, does it really make sense to have Jayden, Gardner Minshew, and Aidan O'Connell? I know Antonio Pierce has said that he wants to have a competition in the quarterback room, and I know all those things. But does anybody think that Aidan's going to beat out Jayden or that Gardner's going to beat out Jayden Daniels? And maybe he does in year one. Maybe he does, and you're going to have him sit for a season. But then if you're still going to have him sit, that still means one of those other quarterbacks that to me that's at least good enough to be a backup somewhere could at least get value. Like, I know that I'm not as high on Aidan O'Connell, but Aidan's good enough to be a backup quarterback in the NFL. I don't think he should be a quarterback 3, just like I don't think that Gardner Minshew should be a quarterback 3. And if the plan is to draft a guy like Jayden and have him sit legitimately for a year, well, then I can understand why you would want to keep both. If you're like, no, that's not the plan, well, then I'd say if you can, you might as well trade one of them. I don't know what you'd get for Gardner or Aidan, but having one of those guys as a QB3 doesn't seem like a very smart decision for me.